Welcome back to the Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, the Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire, developing innovative technologies for knocking down wildfires as yet another quiver in the arsenal. I don't know if I can make some metaphors like that. You could have another arrow in the quiver, or you could have another tool in the arsenal, but I don't know if you can have another tool in the quiver. Anyway, see, I've got myself so confused now. I'm going to need somebody to straighten me out. Who better than Matthew Austin joining us live? Now, this is ironic. Matthew Austin, but Matthew is in San Antonio. So very soon, I understand, there'll be no difference. It'll be like DFW, Fort Worth area. It'll just be that big stretch. Welcome to the Fire Break, Matthew. How are you?
I'm good. How are you tonight, Steve?
I'm good. So I see you're relatively new to the wildfire space. It looks like you really just jumped in here only about 27 years ago.
Yeah. It's still a journey. It really has. There's been a lot of technological pushes forward, along with many, many years of traditional, all the way back to how 𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐴 did it back when it first started.
Okay, so let's talk about tradition. It seems to many people that tradition is not simply the basis on which we build the future, but sometimes mistakenly preferred over the future. That the fire service is generally regarded to be what do they call it? 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress.
Right.
So, to what degree do you feel like tradition serves as a block keeping new technologies or new tactics and strategies out?
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're 100% not wrong. I think that it has always become an issue. It's the same as being nearsighted and farsighted if you have glasses. Sometimes you want to be able to see at distance, but can't see what's in front of your face, and then vice versa. I think that it has slowed progress. I don't think that it has completely impeded it. But when technology presents itself to our community that could be a benefit right away, the initial response is like a bowl of lima beans. It's pushed back across the table. We don't need that. One of my greatest mentors back in the day, Mike Leddington out of California, taught me what's called a sliding rule theory. The old sliding rule for people much more seasoned than ourselves. I used to use it in math. You could slide it to get your answers. The thought that we've done it this way for this long, it's always worked for us. There's never been a problem. We're going to do it this way, and that's the only way we're going to do it.
Dr. Phil, how's that working for you?
Well, for the longest time, it did, but with the changes in fire behavior, fire intensity, wildland-urban interface spreading even deeper into that space, we cannot use the same traditions, tactics, and technology that we used from when I started back in, late 90s. It's not going to work anymore.
Yeah, we're getting more drying days, hotter, drier, windier.
Right.
And so if the fires or conditions are different, you're going to need a different tool or a different suite of tools.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go back and confuse myself with the quiver and the arsenal, but new stuff is going to be necessary to deal with the new conditions. So what are you seeing in terms of new technology coming out, or new software coming out, new detection capabilities, new suppression capabilities? It doesn't feel like it's a really crowded space right now. Right.
And I'm actually really excited to see what's going on this fire season. And I think the West Coast, as always, it's been the staple of, or the mecca, for a better term, what's going on. You're seeing the unmanned aerial systems, UAS, is starting to be actually used in conjunction with aircraft. For the longest time it was, and everybody can remember, if we fly, you don't, all of this.
Right.
Now you're seeing a push to where, like on some of the fires that I was just checking this morning, you're seeing the UAVs being used at night for IR flights to find hot spots and lines, cold edges and hot edges, things of that nature. Um, the locations of each firefighters with ADAC, things of that nature. Um, it is nice to see, because when I started years and years ago, it was here's a plastic, here's a backpack, don't fit your water, go that way. And I was really blessed to have some big time mentors in the game, who taught me how to make sense of all of that, because it can be a lot. But now with the advances in technology to current, the amount of information that is being fed to you, minus a smoke column 30 miles out and you're speeding to it, is light years ahead. I mean, even use early detection cameras, Alert West, Pano AI, all these other technologies. You know, these fire captains and these engines are on these hand crews can literally be like us, sitting here having a full-blown, orientation on their phone from the cameras, and know fire behavior, speed, where's it going, what's it heading towards, even before they get there and put boots on the ground. So I'm really excited to see the safety that this is increasing within our community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have the technology now to get more and more data about fires. The part where I'm not sure where we're caught up is that data doesn't cause fires. We're still putting people in harm's way. And, why are we not seeing the robotic Pulaski machine that just drives up and does its thing? Or unmanned tractors or unmanned, jet engine systems. Start taking people out of the fire, because that's a sure recipe for fatalities.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see a full integration or a full removal, I should say, of the human factor in it. Myself, including starting from a shovel and working my way into a bulldozer with the Texas Forest Service here. There's just some areas that no one but a man can get to. Steepness, rock shelves, things of that nature. But in areas where we're starting to get into that high intensity, high severity, extreme fire behavior that's been used for years. There's other alternatives now than putting the human factor in front of that. Nobody wants to lose any piece of equipment, but more importantly, nobody ever wants to lose a human being.
Right. Yeah, and it's tragic when we do, and especially when it's not necessary. 25% of the fatalities are happening as a result of aerial firefighting, and many more of them happen simply in transit to or from a fire.
Right.
So, to the degree that we can take people out of that, we should really be looking at that.
I agree. Any way that we can use technology to push ourselves forward and be more adaptable. I mean, that's the real ticket in this, is let's be more adaptable. Let's decide to put a piece of equipment that can be used at a distance and controlled. So if there is a loss, it's unfortunate. Like I said, nobody wants to lose equipment, but we can regroup and pick a different tactic. My God, the military has been using it for years with drones.
Right.
And I'm hesitant to say what's the hang up, because it comes down to budgets. It comes down to release technology and qualifying it and things of that nature. But we need to keep steadily pushing that direction, or we're still going to have issues, like the Man Gulch fire and these other lessons learned. And a lot of them now, and I mean now as in 2024, can be avoided.
Yeah. And I guess there shouldn't be, I hope there's not still a sense that any fire is someone else's problem. As far as I can tell, there's only one atmosphere. And, you know, when the Canadians have a huge fire there, like that impacts us and beyond. So it's really something where it's to everyone's benefit, as far as I can tell, to help each other out with suppression efforts.
Yeah. I mean, this concept of, well, that's their problem, and it's over there, it's out of sight, out of mind. It's got to stop. The fact of the matter is, like I said earlier, the fire regime within the United States, North America, quit looking at it as just a Nevada problem, a California, a West Coast. The fire regime and class has changed dramatically, period. We keep going further into the wildland-urban interface, which is going to continue to change. When, I mean, you're here in Texas, if you've been here, 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭, which is outside of Austin, I mean, it's nothing but juniper, scrub oak, and cedar.
Yeah.
And you drive by some of these houses, and they're pushed right up around the house. And from the wildland fire or even the municipal firefighter standpoint, how am I going to protect that? No. And so, as much as it starts at the top with all this new advancements in technology, there's still a ground level game that needs to be pushed. And it almost needs to be a pinching attack towards the center. Homeowner education, changing building materials, changing styles of developments. Stop building developments with only one in, one out, and, the suburban and rural areas. Fire hydrants, community water systems, roofing materials, vegetation. I mean, we could go ad nauseam. We all preach it, but we need to continue driving it home. And I think one of the biggest things that needs to happen from the bottom, utilizing the top, is there needs to be a change in building code in areas that have been identified as a high fire threat.
Are there fires of the magnitude where it doesn't matter what your house is built up? It's going to be a pile of ash when you get back to it?
You're not wrong. When we have a severe conflagration fire, and it's just tilting. A perfect example earlier this year in Texas would be a fire up north of Amarillo. You have a light, flashy fuel environment coupled with high winds, coupled with extreme drying conditions. You're not going to stop it. Bottom line. But at the same time, having a home that can withstand a certain level of intensity, you have the utmost extreme intensity here, and then you have a standard wildfire, which I know is a weird comment, but it's the ones we see on the news every day. We can get a handle on it within, say, 72 hours. And then you have a low intensity fire where it's just kind of cleaning the earth. If we can build homes and communities are cognizant enough that they can survive the bottom two, then we really just kind of have to worry about the top shelf. It's a weird conundrum, though, because we plan in this industry for every concept that we can think of. But when you get a fire like the Paradise Fire or the one in Amarillo, where all the conditions are just prime, there's nothing we can do to stop those. The earth is basically doing what it's been built to do for millions of years. It's going to clean house.
Amarillo, which I believe was called the Panhandle Fire. I thought that was that offered some potential bonuses
Yes.
to the fire service insofar as military assets were threatened. Right? They had to close down the nuclear missile processing plant there. And to the degree that wildfires represent a national security threat as a function of threatening military bases, I think that's where you're going to see, big bucks thrown into innovation.
Yeah.
And then we'll see some trickle over from there to civilian firefighting. I think that's, whether it's drones, rockets, robots, whatever. I think once you start putting military budgets into the R&D, I think that's going to be good for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, once it starts impacting federal installations, military bases, Pantex is the name of the location you're talking about. It makes people's tingly hairs stand up and other body parts kind of pucker. What I think was the best that came out of that fire is the review that they did after, because it was a no holds barred. Let's put everything on the table and let's look at how we responded, how we could have. It was basically an after action review. What was planned? What happened? What can we do better? And I think a lot of good information can be gleaned. That's on YouTube. The entire proceeding, it's like 7.5 hours, if I remember right. And I watched the whole thing. And there was a lot of head shaking. But there was a lot of humble moments in it as well, which goes back to we can still be doing better. Let's not, wipe the sweat from our brow and say we're good. We need to keep looking forward.
Point of view and a change of behavior at every level, right? From homeowners to community managers to municipal districts to federal, state, the whole thing. Like the whole thing needs to take a little shift, I think. So how do you, as I see it?
Right. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, Steve. The other thing that needs to happen, and it's an all hands on deck environment.
Yeah.
So the communities, the homeowners, the utilities, the fire departments, the community managers, like you said, the counties, the states, the federal government, and then whoever overarches within those Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Reclamation, Bureau of Indian Affairs, whoever, there needs to be a consolidated effort to work as a team. I know it already happens. I'm not saying that there's by any means not these conversations and conferences and everything, but we need to do more to keep pushing forward. We really do. And there's a lot of smart people out there. You've had quite a few people on this podcast that we're all on the right track. Now, how do we find the spider web connections to tie it all together?
I think that one of the bigger questions for me is, and you may have some ideas on this based on your work in community wildfire adaptation, but how do we bridge the gap between knowledge and action? There's nobody out there who hasn't heard yet that smoking is bad for you, and yet 20% of the people still smoking. So the news about what you have to do to harden your home, or make your community safer, 5 foot, 35 foot, blah blah, vents, mesh. People know this, but it's not till they smell the smoke that they consider running over to the hardware store and actually getting the tools they need to do something about it. How can we get people to be more proactive?
Right. It's so weird. That is a very hard question to pin one straight answer to. The woodsy owls from back when I was a kid, and Smokey Bear, and all these, an ounce of prevention. Well, we're long past an ounce of prevention. We're more in the buckets, the gallons. It's more like a 5-gallon bucket of prevention now. The insurance companies that provide homeowners insurance now are kind of taking the lead. I'm not going to kind of be quiet about that because it's the truth. There's something right and wrong about them essentially canceling people's insurance because they're in a high wildland scenario. There's so much that can be done, so many incentives that can be offered, new construction, even things as simple as changing the vents on your homes so there's spark arresting versus spark entrances. I think a lot of this information, it comes down from a homeowner standpoint to cost. It's easy to think about this when you're building a new home. But when you've already had your home or you bought a home that's already been built, it gets difficult because now you're looking at further expenditures. And right now, given the world that we live in, that's a hard push for people. It's a very hard push. But I think from the top down should be tax incentives. Can be one, federal tax incentives. Did you do fire preventative measures on your home? And this doesn't have to just be, directly towards the rural homes. I mean, we can flashback to the Cedar fires and the Paradise fires and even the Rice fire in Southern California, which I was a part of. Sturt's Ranch. That's one of the famous pictures is out there. That looks like it's in the middle of nowhere, but it's a 2-minute drive down to Powell.
The Starbucks fire, the Tesla dealerships. It's
right, exactly.
It was a wildland fire that turned the city into wildland.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing we can be doing.
Yeah.
And that falls back into that top-down, bottom-up scenario. What can we do to incentivize, making these changes, making a community adaptation? How do we change things to make this happen? And it's gonna come down to, little elbow grease in some aspects. It's going to come down to some policy changes on another line of it. It's like making a soup. We can have the pot in front of us. What are we going to put in the soup? Are we just doing broth like a pho, or are we going to make chili? And we need to figure out the right amount of ingredients to make this palatable from the top down, bottom up. I know on the Rice fire we had, which was just in North San Diego County and Fallbrook area, there was a lot of homes that made it, and unfortunately some that weren't, and it was kind of half in between and a lot of hard work on behalf of the firefighters there. But two things, homeowners that may see this podcast: one, we want to protect your home, but if the poo hits the rotating oscillator, we're looking at your house to protect, to shelter and survive. So what better way for your home to get some additive protection, but to basically have it almost pristine for us, that almost puts up a big neon, Las Vegas sign and says, "Come here, stay here."
Fool people into thinking by that name that they are supposed to stay.
Yes.
What defensible space means that when firefighters drive by, it looks like they have a decent shot with that house, both at saving it and at getting out themselves if things go south. Yeah.
Yeah, the term defensible space can be extremely deceiving. People and homeowners like to take that concept that, well, it's defendable. That means I can defend it. No, defensible space means when you're told to go, you grab little Susie and little Billy and Peaches the dog and throw them in the car with your pertinent valuables and leave. And it should be reasonably defensible standing by itself. That's what defensible space truly means, where we can come back through on the fire engine and there's a little spot fire in the yard. We can jump out, take care of it, but the house is defending itself. And you've seen a lot of technology also push towards that. Frontline wildfire defense systems with the hose sprinklers. I mean, back in my day, we even had a fire break, all the different gels and the protections and things of that nature. All of these technologies, all these concepts have been around as long as I haven't, long before I was. You know, it's getting to be where we have almost a fire hose of knowledge, technology, systems, and everything that we can drink from. How do you drink from a fire hose? Are we going to take it in one blast, or are we going to take it at a glass at a time until we get full? And that's the metaphoric, I think, equivalent of how we tie kind of everything back together.
The information at fire hose speed, but our mouth's too small, right?
Yeah, it is. And by that point, it's like the old, cartoons where you see them drinking from a hose and it's squirting out of their ears.
Coyote, though.
We need to all. Yeah, exactly. We don't want to, let's not get the Acme version of this out and get started. I think a lot of it really, though, Steve, we need to make sure that it's palatable to homeowners, community members, but also make sure that it's understood. Because and I know people in this industry, we learn these $5, $10, and $15 and $20 words, and we like to toss them around. Remember that you're talking with someone that doesn't have the same knowledge that we have. So let's make it make sense. When I used to do home inspections with a private company years and years ago, I would make sure that the homeowner was there. And I would physically show them, you have these pretty juniper trees next to your garage, but they're underneath your eave. And then from the eave right here, you've got these sparrow holes that are going to let all that heat and flame and everything into your home. And I knew that concept when I was looking at the rest of the home, and I heard a homeowner fire up a chainsaw and cut them down before I left the property. So we need to make sure that it makes sense to them, and then give them what they can do on their own with sweat equity, and then give them the next level. Because even if they can just put in the sweat equity, that is going to remarkably give a better chance to their property and the community. Because all it really takes with the way these zero lot line communities are built is just one house.
Right.
It's like a big fuse, like those old Chinese firecrackers and the big swirl. It just takes one to start popping, and then everyone, there's a good chance the rest of them are going to go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very interesting. When you talked about making sure that homeowners were home so that you could walk through this with them and educate them and see the nods and make sure that they actually understood what you're talking about. This is something that doctors have finally realized too. When a patient comes in and they've had a heart attack and they had a stent put in. If nobody takes the time to explain to them how they got in that position, what they can do to get out of it, then there's no improvement. There's only so many prescriptions you can write. And I imagine when you're walking around the neighborhood, there's only so many prescriptions you can write to people who don't take your wisdom to heart before you just say, what's the point of this?
Right. Right. And, you'd see a large push to get away from finding homeowners within these different areas to where now you're getting these fire-wise communities. And that's the sweat equity we were talking about. Yeah. Some homeowners just flat out can't do it. They can't. They're what age, medical conditions, like you just alluded to. There's different avenues, and those need to be really, funded and really pushed, because that starts your ground level. Because there's nothing more. We know there's nothing worse, especially in Texas, to be the guy in the neighborhood that doesn't have a green lawn. You're that one person. Everybody's going to get on you. If you can get 2 or 3 people in a community that can help others kind of see the errors of their surroundings, what you're going to see is it goes from a couple people to a group to a community to a city to a county to a region to the state.
Just like
and it only starts with one person. Just like that, one little spark. You just got to find someone who's going to be able to pick up that spark and get it going.
Exploring tax incentives or tax rebates for doing the remediation work. And then you have organizations like 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭's fire break risk, which are trying to push insurance companies to fairly compensate homeowners on their premiums for the work that they do. Because if the insurance company has a 40% lower risk, if the homeowner does mitigation, then only offering them a 1.5% reduction in premium, is not really the incentive that's necessary.
Right. And I mean, the insurance companies are in a bad spot. I mean, just like anything else, they're a business. They've got to protect their bottom line. But instead of waiting until the catastrophe happens, another concept is like everybody remembers at some point in your life you used to get that letter from the Social Security office. You worked so many quarters, and if you were to retire right now, this is what you get. I think at the beginning of the fire seasons, based on either an initial inspection or a high wildfire or a high fire danger zone assessment, because most of these insurance companies are now employing people like myself. I as a homeowner would love to get a letter. Hey, just so you know, if there's a fire in your community, based on what your home's cost is in these scenarios, here's what you're going to get. Now, if you do A, B, C, and D, or even A and B, and submit pictures to me that it's done, that will increase your payout to X. If you can do A, B, C, and D, that will increase it to Z. So in that concept right there, the insurance companies are benefiting the bottom line of their company, but you're also kind of initiating that process from the bottom up, because once again, there's an incentive. If my house is completely demolished and I know that I have done everything I can, the insurance company has pictures of me doing everything I can. Now there's not such a back and forth tug and pull with the insurance adjuster that, hey, I cleared that. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. it's more of, we're really sorry for this. Roughly what's going to be coming your way, which is going to speed up the process for these homeowners. The adjusters are already going to have pictures on file of what the property looked like prior to, because how many people have 360-degree picture of their property? I mean, they don't. Nobody thinks of that concept. But then also, if the adjuster comes out to the community, he's already got a list, and he can sit there with all the data that he has for each home. Okay, this one, yes, meets. This one needs a proration, meets, proration, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a concept along that of the years I worked with, multiple high-end insurance companies with other agencies. And they had the concept, but they didn't. This is really a new concept when I was doing it, and now you're seeing kind of more of a push from the homeowners insurance. I mean, I had travelers up until this year I just switched, and even I got a notice, hey, make sure you clean your gutters, make sure you clean, yeah, here I have a 27-year veteran of this, and I forgot to clean my gutters before it got hot and dry.
No, you put a little gravel down there to protect against
really
erosion
don't.
in the event that you have big rain, and then get rid of the gutters. They just collect fuel.
Right. And if you put a little bit of gravel to put your drip line, you might as well put a couple more inches, right. And then you got, a hard landscape barrier against the base of your home that's going to help with sparks and embers. It takes one little concept to push it even further, to kick that can further down the road. And it's like we were talking about on this whole thing, how do we package this up so it makes sense at the top, those big $20 words, and then how does it make sense to the homeowner with those $1 and $2 or $5 words? And then showing them. It's really neat. I mean, when I first started with the Forest Service years ago, I was at the Bear Creek Fire Station in Riverside, California. And we had the fire station, and next to it, and I don't know who built it, we had a model of a hole built on the ground with the proper landscaping and everything. And every year, they would let the weeds grow a little bit close to the house, and they would show people. Of course, they burn it and have the hose and put it out, but show what defensible space really looks like. And it burned within what would be, that still a couple feet of the hole, and it just completely went around it. And it was pretty powerful because that area of Riverside County, there's a lot of canyons that backs up to the Cleveland National Forest, and there's a lot of one-in, one-out communities up there. So it takes, sometimes we get so technologically advanced that we forget the simple things behind us. And we can't forget the past, and we can't, slow down the future, but we can't forget everything we've learned along the way.
Well, wait, maybe I didn't have breakfast, that's why. Well,
exactly.
I know part of your background, you work for 𝐟𝐸𝐺 Electric Company. And you did vegetation management with regard to wildfire, and just like was it Aquaman who was able to talk to the other animals and get them to come? Was that what? It was in the ocean.
I think that was in the ocean. I can't remember who did it on the land, but you're not far off. We'll run with it.
The other animals when they needed help, and rally them together. And I understand that you did a little bit of that as well by swapping out the vegetation under power lines with vegetation that the deer liked. And then you're basically enlisting this army of deer to help you with vegetation management.
Right. I mean, it was something that literally came to me at 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday evening before I had to be to work the next day. anybody who's been in the utility space, the biggest overall cost, period, is vegetation management, keeping the power lines out of the trees, keeping the vegetation cut underneath the power lines. And PEC didn't have much transmission, but they had enough, and it ran both significantly rural and very urban into Cedar Park, Leander, areas around surrounding Austin. And the thought process that I had was, we're spending X millions of dollars a year to pay mowers, and then it rains 2 weeks later, and then that vegetation's just as big as it was 2 weeks ago. Why not switch it out to where it is a vegetation that is tolerable to native wildlife? One, it cuts down the mowing because you're going to remove most of the heavier vegetation out of there. But now you're enlisting wildlife to help you manage essentially a fire break. Because that's what they are. If you think about it, you have your power pole or your transmission pole, and then general rule of thumb is it's anywhere from 25 to 50 feet width. 25 being from the center of the pole each direction, 50 feet wide pole.
The poles would run right by the houses, and the trees were growing up right underneath them. And those trees had usually direct canopy all the way back to the houses.
Yeah, you're creating a gigantic fuse, and it plays hell in some communities for utilities because no one wants to get their tree trimmed or be told that they need to remove it. So, one of the things that I really liked about the utility I worked at is they did a tree replacement program. We're going to take the tree out underneath this power line. We'll give you a tree, but this line back in the yard, and usually when I did that portion of it, I carried the little sprinkler flags, a visual from boom here back. You can replant that tree anywhere on your property. And generally when you're going to take something but give something back, they would actually run with it. So, like I said, the utilities are quickly learning that they're just as much involved in this. The gold standard for, at least in my world, because I survived in it, would be Sempra Energy, Southern California. A couple of my biggest mentors, Hal Mortier, Bill Malumbi, were part of that program. And they have literally, when a utility has hired a meteorologist, a slew of fire trucks, they're doing standby fire prevention on it. They're aggressive on their fuels management underneath. What better way than hiring someone who's had to fight these monsters to help prevent a monster than, it's always fine. You look at these job openings and they want a 4-year engineering degree. How do you engineer a wildfire? And I understand that there's standards, but when you got guys that are coming out of the federal space, the state space, and even myself, who have all this knowledge, but it's all wrapped up in certifications because that's how the fire industry is. You can utilize these people either on a policy level and operational level to help get a grip and help protect these communities. I mean, we look at it from the 30,000-foot level all the way down to the ground, and we've been doing it for years.
Mitigation is one thing, suppression is another. Mitigation is just fighting the fire before it gets to you.
Mm-hmm. It's, we don't, and this is the thing that the media is starting to understand as well. We don't put out wildfires, we steer them until they run out of fuel. So let's, as communities, as states, as whatever entity in it, let's start making those types of spaces that we can run it into and basically knock its teeth out. If we can knock its teeth out, then
with regard to
we're good to go.
prescribed burns, it's very often difficult to get those approved now because of the fear that they're going to run away. So one of the things that we're seeing is when you get a lightning strike and induced fire,
Right.
they say, oh, well, we didn't plan this fire, but now it's going. So let's steer it for a while and use it as a prescribed burn that we didn't have to ask permission for.
Mm-hmm. Right. Every fire that is ignited does not have to be 100% suppression effort right off the bat. Texas is very good about that. They'll work with the landowners. We're in a very, very weird state. And before all of a sudden people start lining up at my door with pitchforks, 98% of the state of Texas is privately owned. So that means almost this entire state is owned by individuals. It's private land. So it puts it in a weird spot. They have done a great job, a fabulous job, Texas A&M and the Forest Service, about educating these ranch owners, either graze it or burn it. And let's cut down on this. And they're getting, and they're making a lot of headway. That's something to be commended. The issue is when you get into other states where you have larger entities, larger communities, and more public land, that's where you start having a lot of the people doing the, whoa, time out. Do we really have to? Can we just maybe next year? There needs to be, the fear factor needs to be, calmed down, and the concept of how we're going to handle this as a community needs to be the speaking piece of it, Steve.
I love that when you go up against a fire, you've gone up against it in advance using the Bambi force, and then during it with the Bambi bucket. So you've got deer working all over for you.
Right. Yeah. We have Bambi buckets in the skies, and, now on some of the right-of-ways within central Texas, we've got Bambi working on the ground.
Texas go to the nursery to decide how, what fuels they're going to buy to place around their homes. They're usually looking for the deer-resistant ones, but maybe within that defensible space, they provide something for the deer to help create the fire break.
Right. So you can have the deer resistant right up along your home, right up against the structure and in your flower beds to stay pretty. But a little further out, the areas that your lawnmower can't quite make it over, because we all know there's nothing but rocks in Texas. You can adapt your fuels to where native wildlife actually finds that power hole in their four-wheel drive, and they can get out there and actually clean it for you. So there's no specific methodology to it, but we can definitely adapt it per community that is presented. There's been a lot of work in like the Berkeley area of California where they're using goat herds to clear the hillsides. Great idea. Whoever thought of that? Gold star. Good job. They don't run out of fuel. You can't make them tired, and they're gonna cut it bare. They're gonna rip it out of the ground. The biggest issue that happens in a lot of the Midwest is the decline in livestock. Livestock used to be the mowing force in these areas. And with the reduction in cattle and sheep and everything else, well, the land's going to revert back to what it was. And that fire regime is going to revert back to what it was. Yeah. If you haven't built your house in the middle of a pasture, you're good. But if you did, or you own a ranch, don't just look down your driveway. Turn around off the corner of your house and look down that embankment and see what's down there. I bet you there's a lot of switchgrass and Johnson grass, things that are going to burn really fast and really hot. So, like I said, it's not just a community endeavor. The whole community.
Yes, that's right. I mean, if you lost your house,
so it is going to have to be an individual.
You know, that could be a result of someone's failure to mitigate 50 miles away. So you really have to make these things community-wide and statewide.
But, right, you know, in a perfect scenario, perfect world, with the perfect homeowner, with the perfect set of environmental factors, it doesn't matter if the fire started 5 feet away, 5 miles, or 50 miles. When it gets to you, you know, little Billy and little Susie are in the car, and Buster the dog's in the back, and you and your significant other are in there, and all your valuables. Lock the doors, leave the lights on, go, and whether the fire department can make it to it or not, you know, you might have some scorching, some charring, some siding that's down,
I've
but
also heard that you shouldn't lock the
the house will live to see another day.
To make entry, you can. Okay.
You're not supposed to, Steve, but inevitably it never fails.
As information.
So there is, and that's the thing. And there needs to be a concerted message. And the problem is, for the longest time, it was, you know, lock and shut all your windows, lock and shut all this. Okay, don't do that. Okay, do half of it. We'll get back to you on that. Let's stick to a message. I know things, you know, advance and change and everything else, but let's take a methodology and stick to it.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. So, I mean, any way that myself or my compadres can help the world, we're for it. I mean, the knowledge is no good stuck in our head. 27 years, we got people out there, 50, 45 years of this knowledge. You know, let's find a way to tap into that and use it for the benefit of everyone.
With retirements. How do we pass that on?
The biggest thing, the federal government has its own system, which drives me insane. You can't get hired past your 35th birthday, and you're going to get let go at your 55th. It's been like that forever. That needs to change. The biggest thing is, if you have an idea, speak up. If you have knowledge, teach it to the people below you. If you have a concern, make sure it's voiced. A lot of these things are like common knowledge. But it's so simple to, well, no one's listening, so I'm just going to sit over here. Don't be that person. Right. You know, the knowledge that we have gained in this industry is so specialized and so unique. You need to share it. Make sure that people below you know what you've learned, because I guarantee you at some point, someone a lot smarter than you taught you some of the stuff in small, chewable bites that you know now.
Matthew. And boy, what a great resource you are to the community. I'm looking to the day when we put the electrodes on you, we download it into the AI, we add that wisdom cumulatively, and then you end up with an AI system with the wisdom and the benefits of the wisdom and your experiences.
Right.
You know,
the immortal brain trust with electrodes.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It was really great.
Absolutely. Anytime. And you guys will appreciate it. And Steve, it's always a pleasure. And anytime someone has information, they can find me, and I'll be more than happy to share whatever I have.
You can find your LinkedIn and reach you through there. And thank you so much for joining me. This has been Matthew Austin right here on the Fire Break. And as you know, the Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire.
Thank you.
Working on new technologies and tactics to make fires a little bit safer. Take care, and we'll see you at the next one.